Hi everyone, welcome back to Tech with Viresh. Today I'm going to start a new series on the generative AI, and in this series, the first video that I'm coming up with is what is the essential difference between prompt engineering and context engineering? This is a very common question, and these two terms get used very interchangeably. We'll try to see what is prompt engineering and what is context engineering, and how the two are different, or we should say how these two supplement each other and complement each other to enable the best response from the LLMs. So let's go ahead and let's see what is prompt engineering and what is context engineering. So, prompt engineering in a very simplistic term is nothing but crafting the very precise to the point instructions that we want to fed to an LLM to get the response to our questions, right? This is the way how you ask a question to an LLM, right? We define that what that model should do for us, right? And in a very basic prompt engineering, we define or assign a role to an LLM. We ask our question and define the format or the type of the output that we want to receive. So you do a goal setting, you define your question, right? And you define the output of the response from the LLM. This is what we call as the prompt engineering. If we look at from a code perspective here, if you look at it, I've defined a very simple prompt, and in the first line itself, we are assigning a role to the LLM where we are saying it's a Databricks SQL expert. So it explicitly makes that our output would be a SQL output if we don't define it otherwise. And then we are feeding a question into it to find out top 5 customers by revenue. And we fed it to LLM, we get a response. It's a very generic, very simplistic, and we'll also get a generic response out of it based on the creativity of the LLM response. On the other hand, if we talk about the context engineering, it enriches the same prompt but provides it with additional information. It provides it with additional data points. It provides it with the information about the surroundings and the environment where we want to run that question, right? And we fed all this information to the model to get a very deterministic and a reliable response, right? And this context information can be supplemented from multiple ways, either from a database, it could be a delta table in Databricks, it could be a set of documents, your PDFs, your APIs, your prior chats, your historical data of a particular user, and so on and so forth. There is no restriction. There are multiple ways how we can fed this information, or it could be as simple as, say, some text format, some text information going along with the prompt, right? For example, the same prompt that we written earlier, we have enriched it this time with a context, right? We are giving it the additional information about the table, the schema, and so on and so forth, and again asking the same question, right? Now, the pertinent question comes here, right? What are the challenges this context engineering is trying to solve? We know LLMs are powerful, right? But prompts alone are not enough. Not enough to get a very surrounding or an environment specific response. Real world AI needs context to perform reliably, right? And as we talked about, context is nothing, it's a surrounding information, additional information that you can give to an LLM to shape its response in the context aware manner, right? So, in a very simplistic, in a nutshell, context is nothing, the additional information that you want to provide to the model, and you know that model can make use of this information to answer my question. So, that is what a context is. Now, let's see it from a demo perspective, that how we craft a simplistic context as part of the prompt, and what sort of response do we get when the context is provided, right? The same example, if you see here, we have defined a template, right, and asking a question. Now, when I run it through an LLM, I get a response back where it gives me a query to find the top 5 customers by revenue. And here, by its own intelligence and creativity, it has created some table name to create a syntactically correct query. It has created some column names and given you an aggregated query as you asked to find the top 5 customers, right? Now, the same prompt in the next example, we enrich it with the context. Now we additionally supplement it with the information about my table name, the different columns, their data types, and so on and so forth, and ask the same query, right? Herein, if we look at the response, we'll see now it is using a very specific information provided in the context. If you see the table name, it's the same table name that we have provided in our context. If you look at the column name, it is using the same column name which is coming from the context. So the query, the nature of the query remains the same, but now it is very much specific to the surroundings, environment, and the context provided. So that's how you can shape the response to be more deterministic with an element of context engineering. Okay. Now we can say if we try to supplement our prompts with the context, it means we'll get intelligent response from the LLMs, a smarter response from the LLMs. The two responses are there on the right hand side. You can see the difference. One is very specific. I can just use this response and put it into my environment and use it right away. Not the first one, right? So in a nutshell, prompt engineering help us to shape what the model does, how it responds to our question. But the context engineering allows us to, based on the surrounding informations, based on the context informations, it can shape the response which is more well enabled, more context aware. And together they enable the reasoning, the personalization of the response, and the determinism of the response. So these are the primary difference between the prompt engineering and the context engineering. That's it as part of this video. Have a great day ahead. Thanks for watching. Thank you. Bye bye.